Hello there, and welcome to Echoes of the Imperium. I'm truly glad you've arrived. Maybe it's been a long day, or maybe you're the kind of soul who prefers to drift into sleep with thoughts of distant stars and ancient cosmic secrets instead of counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey belongs to you. You don't need to do anything now, just rest. Let your mind grow quiet, your breath steady, and your body feel lighter, as if even the pull of gravity has begun to fade away.
When I first felt the rupture tear across the warp, it did not roar, or scream, or burn as so many lesser wounds do. It simply opened, quietly, like an eye that had long been closed and had finally chosen to look upon me, and in that moment, within the breath between existence and non-existence, I understood that something had reached for me across an impossible gulf, something ancient, something hungry, something that had mistaken me for prey. I remember the sensation of falling without motion, of being unmade without dying. My mind stretched across 1,000 fractured timelines as the immaterial bled into something far older than the immaterium, a domain shaped not by the emotions of mankind but by the primal myths of another world entirely. And when the veiled darkness dissolved, I found myself standing upon a silent mountain ridge beneath a sky that felt alien in a way no Xeno's world ever had. The air here was thick with the weight of story, prophecy, and memory, as though even the wind carried the echo of ancient battles fought long before any star had known humanity. I knew immediately this was not Terra, nor any of the million worlds under my dominion, nor even a shard of the warp. This was a land born from the violent dreams of gods who had never learned to fear me, a world where divinity was carved from flesh rather than belief, where power was not psychic but elemental, cruel, and intimately entwined with the soil itself. And as I walked, the earth groaned under my feet, as though recognizing the presence of something that did not belong, something that disrupted the old, familiar cycle of creation and destruction that had governed these lands since their first dawn. The first thing I truly understood about this world was its silence. Not peaceful, not sacred, but watchful. Eyes followed me, real eyes, mortal eyes, those of small woodland spirits clinging to branches, creatures half hidden behind stones, the faint flicker of distant torches carried by men who felt the shift in their fates and whispered prayers to gods who would never answer again. This realm was wounded. I could feel it in the tremor of the trees, in the way the shadows clung to the ground like spilled blood. Something had torn through this place before I arrived, something monstrous, something bearing the unmistakable stench of divinity struggling against its own extinction. I tasted it in the air, the scent of a god who had fought his destiny tooth and nail, who had broken fate itself with sheer rage. And beneath that, another scent, softer, quieter, a boy. A child whose presence wove through the world like a thread of possibility that reality itself had not yet chosen to cut. As I approached the edge of the ridge, the landscape unfolded into a vast forest of blackened spruce and frost-hardened soil, mountains like the spines of sleeping colossi rising in the distance. And near the center of that wilderness, I sensed them, two beings whose souls shone like dying stars against the dim tapestry of this world. One burned with a rage so old it had calcified into sorrow. The other glimmered with the fragile brilliance of a future not yet written. Kratos and Atreus. I did not yet know their names, but their fates pressed against my mind like a whisper carved in stone. In them I felt echoes of my own broken lineage, the sons I had created to save mankind, who had instead shattered beneath the weight of their purpose, the sons who had betrayed me, worshipped me, murdered in my name, and died seeking forgiveness I had never learned to give. And now I stood on the threshold of another father and son bound by war, loss, and prophecy, drawn to me as though the universe itself sought to remind me of all I had failed to mend. I stepped forward, and the world tightened around me. The fabric of reality here was not passive, it reacted to my presence. The trees bent subtly away, their branches creaking with the strain of resisting the force that radiated from my being. Snowflakes hung suspended in the air for a heartbeat too long, as though uncertain whether gravity still applied in the presence of a being who had defied it for millennia. This world recognized power, but it did not understand me. Its gods were things of muscle, emotion, myth, creatures defined by their stories. I was something different, a weapon forged from humanity's desperate need to survive itself, a sovereign who had burned the galaxy clean of monsters only to become one. The difference between me and the gods of this place was the difference between a flame and a star. One warms or destroys what it touches, the other consumes everything indiscriminately because that is its nature. As I descended the ridge, a group of spectral figures emerged between the trees. They were not spirits of the warp, they were memories given shape, fragments of myth lingering in the cold air, echoes of the dead gods who once ruled this land. They drifted around me like wounded animals, uncertain whether to flee or bow. One approached, its form flickering between that of a warrior and a wolf, its face contorted by anguish older than empires. It spoke without sound, its words carried through the marrow of the world itself. A stranger, a god who is not a god. Your presence unravels the loom. I reached out to touch the ghost, and it recoiled, dissolving into a cloud of frost that drifted upward and vanished into the grey sky. But its message lingered. I was not simply a visitor here. I was a paradox, an impossibility that fate had no place for, and that frightened the destiny woven into this world. Something had brought me here, but nothing wanted me here. And yet, in the distance, I could feel the pulse of a presence that recognized me, not as enemy, not as ally, but as equal. Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, a being who had murdered gods not for glory, or ambition, or prophecy, but because he could not bear the weight of his own suffering. In him, I sensed a force that rivaled even my own, not psychic, not warp-bound, but something forged in the crucible of unending war. He was like a primarch who had no father, a weapon who had made himself. And he felt me drawing near. The forest shuddered as our fates aligned. Somewhere far below, in a small clearing dusted with snow, an axe was lifted mid-swing as Kratos froze and looked toward the mountains. His son paused beside him, uncertain, sensing only a whisper of what approached. But Kratos felt it fully. The air shifted around him, the ground trembled beneath his boots, and for the first time in many years, the ghost of Sparta felt something he had nearly forgotten. The presence of a power equal to his own, a will that could not be bent, a being who had carved empires from blood and fire the way he had carved vengeance from the bones of gods. And as he stared toward the ridge where I stood, I felt his question pierce the distance like an arrow. The forest seemed to narrow as I continued my descent, not physically, but in the way its presence pressed inward, as though the trees themselves conspired to confine the path ahead, creating a corridor of frostbitten stone and bark that guided me not by choice but by intention. And the deeper I walked into this frozen labyrinth, the more I felt the thrum of a consciousness that was not my own, vast, ancient, and coiled like a sleeping serpent beneath the surface of reality. This world was reacting to my arrival with increasing aggression, not in open hostility but in a subtle, protective tension, as though attempting to insulate its existing narrative from the intrusion of something so catastrophically foreign that even its myths could not comprehend it. The scent of pine thickened until it felt like sap in the lungs, the haze of cold air sharpening into crystalline particles that glittered around me like suspended fragments of broken starlight. Beneath my feet, the frozen ground vibrated with the faint heartbeat of a world that understood that something unnatural walked upon it, something that had burned through galaxies in its pursuit of meaning and now trespassed into a land that defined itself through stories rather than stars. And as I reached the base of the ridge, I felt a ripple across the fabric of existence, as though someone, or something, had seen me fully for the first time. Kratos did not hide. He was not a creature of stealth or concealment, not anymore. When he moved, it was with the deliberate certainty of a man who had no reason to fear anything the world could place before him. And as I stepped into a clearing where the trees thinned into a ring of frost-covered stones, he was already there, standing at its center with the weight of an entire world balanced across his broad shoulders. He did not lift his axe in threat, nor did he reach for the chains that lay dormant beneath the hardened skin of his forearms, scarred reminders of the life he had left behind. Instead, he stood perfectly still, his breath forming slow, controlled clouds that diffused into the cold air, his single remaining eye studying me with a scrutiny that was neither hostile nor afraid, but intensely, almost painfully aware. The boy, Atreus, stood at his father's side, smaller than I expected, yet burning with a quiet, coiled potential that shimmered through the air like a barely suppressed storm. His hand hovered near the bow slung across his shoulder, not in fear, but in readiness, and though he could not sense the full magnitude of what I was, he felt enough of it to understand that silence was the only appropriate response. I stepped forward, and the ground groaned as though the weight of my presence were rewriting the very rules that governed it. Kratos' expression did not shift, not outwardly, but I watched the subtle tightening of his jaw, the way his stance shifted by the smallest fraction to place himself more firmly between me and the boy. He had fought gods before. He had killed them. And though he likely did not understand what I was, he recognized in me the unmistakable aura of something that existed on the same brutal plane as the beings he had spent a lifetime resisting. When he finally spoke, his voice was a low growl, roughened by centuries of unending war and grief. "You are not of this realm," he said, not a question, but a simple statement of fact. His words hung in the air like a blade. "No," I replied, my voice resonating not just in sound but in the marrow of the world around us. "I am not." Atreus took a small step closer to his father, curiosity sparking in his young eyes. "Father, what is he?" Before Kratos could answer, I saw it, the pulse of prophecy flickering along the edges of the boy's being. Atreus, Loki, child of two destinies, a creature of transformation whose existence altered the path of the very gods he walked among. His perception brushed against mine, tentative, searching. And in that instant, I realized that the boy's awareness was not bound by the limitations of the flesh but influenced by the woven strands of fate that shaped this world. He sensed something deeper than his father did, not my identity, but my consequence. "Something wrong," he whispered, half to himself. "Something that shouldn't be here." Kratos gave a quiet grunt of agreement. I let the silence linger, tasting the tension in the air. These two were bound by a narrative that was not mine, a prophecy that was already struggling to survive my intrusion. My presence here risked unraveling it in ways even I could not predict. And yet something had drawn me, had dragged me, across the impossible threshold that separated the Imperium from this mythic realm. "I was taken," I said, the words heavier than I intended. "Torn from my own reality by a force I have not yet identified. I seek only knowledge." Atreus tilted his head, curiosity warring with caution. "Knowledge about what?" "About why I am here," I answered, "and what this world intends for me." Kratos' eye narrowed, studying me with renewed intensity. He was not a creature of the warp, nor did he possess psychic gifts, yet the sheer brutality of his life had given him a sense of perception not unlike a trained psycher's intuition. He could feel lies, or their absence, with startling accuracy. "If you threaten the boy," he said quietly, "this realm will not be enough to hide you." There was no boast in his tone, only truth. And though I possessed power that dwarfed his own, I did not underestimate him, for Kratos' strength did not stem from divinity but from the simple, terrible fact that he refused to die. "I do not threaten him," I replied. "Nor do I threaten you." Atreus exhaled softly, not in relief, but in recognition. "He means it," the boy murmured. Kratos did not acknowledge the comment, but his stance shifted slightly, the edge of immediate violence receding. "Why have you sought us?" he asked. I considered his question carefully. The truth was elusive even to me. "Because you felt me," I said. "And I felt you. There are no others in this realm whose presence resonates across the fabric of existence." Atreus frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Kratos said, answering for me with the grim weight of a man accustomed to truths he never wished to learn, "that this one is a god." The word echoed through the clearing like a challenge. Atreus' eyes widened, not in fear, but in awe, quickly tempered by the hard-learned wariness of a child raised in the shadow of divine cruelty. "Another," he whispered. I met the boy's gaze. "Not like the ones you know." "All gods are the same," Kratos muttered. I felt the sting of that truth, sharp, deliberate, and uncomfortably earned. Gods in this realm were tyrants, manipulators, creatures of ego and myth. And in many ways, I was no better. Kratos continued, "If you are here to interfere in our fate, leave now." I shook my head. Fate brought me here. I do not yet know why, but I suspect our paths are now bound. Kratos' jaw tightened. He did not like that answer. I could feel the muscle of his will flexing against the idea of destiny, against the notion of yet another higher power seeking to shape his life. His voice grew colder. "We make our own path." "So do I replied. "And yet here we stand." For the first time, something like reluctant understanding flickered in his expression. We were not allies, not enemies, but two forces that the world itself struggled to contain. And the consequences of our meeting rippled outward like cracks in a frozen lake. The deeper we walked into the forest, the more I felt the strain of two incompatible realities grinding against one another, as though my very presence here was peeling away the thin membrane that kept this world's myths from collapsing into something far more dangerous. And with each step the atmosphere thickened, not with the warp's familiar psychic turbulence, but with a mythic pressure that seeped out of the soil like ancient sap, heavy with memory, grief, and prophecy. Kratos said little, leading with the silent certainty of a man who trusted nothing, not even the ground beneath his feet. Atreus moved beside him in thoughtful tension, his mind racing ahead of his body, brushing faintly against futures that flickered and died before he could grasp them. I could sense the boy's curiosity spiraling around me like a tide, not intrusive, but drawn irresistibly to the anomaly I represented. A god without a myth, a sovereign without a legend, a figure whose story had not yet been absorbed into the fabric of this realm. In this world, everything gained shape through story. Gods lived and died according to narrative, not divinity. And because I had no story here, the world itself did not know what to do with me. The disorder manifested subtly at first. The trees shifted their positions when unobserved. Stones cracked in spiraling patterns that resembled runes but meant nothing. Small woodland spirits flickered between forms as though forgetting what shape they belonged to. Atreus noticed these things before Kratos did. "Father, the forest feels wrong," he whispered. Kratos' jaw tightened. It has felt wrong since he arrived. I did not argue. He was correct. A faint tremor rolled across the ground, subtle but undeniable. Atreus turned sharply, eyes scanning the shadows. Kratos' grip tightened on the Leviathan axe. I felt it before they did, the approach of something massive, ancient, and bound to the very bones of this land. Its presence was not malevolent, not yet, but it was driven by an instinctual hostility toward anything that violated the natural order. A guardian spirit, a creature of this mythic world sent to assess the breach I represented. The rumbling grew louder, resonating through the roots beneath our feet until the snow trembled in patterned waves. Then the forest parted, not gently, but as though being forced aside by a body too large for the space it occupied. The creature that emerged was a towering amalgamation of stone, bark, and ancient runic glow. A forest golem shaped by centuries of slumber, its limbs crackling with elemental frost and its eyes burning with a dull blue fury. Atreus stepped back instinctively. "A Jotnar construct," he whispered. Kratos raised his axe but did not strike. The creature was not attacking, yet. It was studying me, searching for a category into which it could place what it saw. Finding none, it reacted with fear, a slow, deliberate rage that manifested as a grinding groan from deep within its chest. Its massive hand lifted, its fingers curling around boulders of frost-coated stone that glowed with runic patterns as old as time. Then, in a gesture that shook the air, it slammed its fist into the earth. The shockwave rippled outward in a violent burst. Kratos shielded Atreus with his body as the trees bent like reeds. Snow exploded into blinding clouds, and shards of ice slashed through the air like thrown daggers. I stood still, letting the surge wash against me. The impact struck my armor with a force that would have shattered a lesser being, but it dispersed harmlessly, rippling into the ground through the golden plates like water hitting an immovable cliff. The golem staggered, confused, its primitive consciousness trying to comprehend why its attack had failed. I raised a hand, not threateningly, but as a gesture of stillness. "I am not your enemy," I said, though the creature could not truly understand language. It understood intent, however, and the emotional imprint that surrounded me was not something it could reconcile. All the myths of this world were shaped by anger, love, vengeance, fear, emotions that bled into the land like dye into water. But I was shaped by something colder, something the creature could not interpret. Purpose without emotion, destiny without surrender. That was enough to terrify it. With another guttural roar, it drew back its massive arm, preparing to strike again. Kratos did not wait. The Leviathan axe flashed through the air in a perfect arc, its runes igniting in a burst of icy brilliance as it struck the creature's arm, cleaving through layers of stone and bark with a sound like the cracking of a glacier. The golem staggered but did not fall. It swung its other arm toward Kratos, a blow that would have shattered a mountain ridge. Kratos braced, only for the strike to halt inches from him, the massive arm suspended as though held by an unseen force. But it was not unseen. My hand gripped the creature's stony limb, fingers sinking through its brittle exterior with ease, warp-forged strength meeting myth-forged matter. The golem's blue eyes widened with something resembling instinctual terror. I did not crush it. I simply held it, and in that quiet moment, the creature realized that it was standing before something that could unmake it with the same ease one brushes frost from a window. It emitted a rumbling groan, plea, protest, perhaps both, and then collapsed its stance, lowering itself halfway to the earth in submission. Atreus' eyes widened. "I've never seen one do that," he whispered. Kratos exhaled through his nose, tension coiling into curiosity. "Why does it bow?" I released the creature's arm, allowing it to retreat into the forest with slow, ponderous steps, its body shedding flakes of frozen bark. "It senses a threat to the order of this land," I said. "But not from you," Atreus murmured. "From you." The boy spoke the truth plainly, without malice. "Why would this realm fear you?" he asked. I regarded him for a long moment. "Because I am not part of its story," I answered. "And stories fear the unknown." Atreus' brow furrowed. the weight of prophecy already working through his young mind. "If you stay here, will it get worse?" "Yes," I said, not unkindly. This world was not built to contain me. Kratos' gaze sharpened. "Then why are you here?" I considered the question, feeling once again the echo of the force that had dragged me across realities. "Because something here has chosen to challenge fate," I said. Atreus and Kratos exchanged a brief, silent glance. "This world is built on prophecy," I continued, "bound to threads that dictate its future. But one of those threads has been severed, or rewritten." Atreus swallowed. "Our thread?" The boy's voice carried a tremor he tried to hide. "Your future," I said, and the cold truth of it hung in the air like a blade of frost. "Something about your path has disrupted the flow of destiny across realms." Kratos' expression hardened, the weight of a father's fear descending upon him like a shroud. "We do not answer to fate," he said. "You may not," I replied, "but fate answers to you. And someone, fears what that means." The forest groaned in response, as though the world itself recoiled at my words. And deep beneath us, like the shifting of a colossal serpent in restless sleep, something old began to wake. The mountain path narrowed into a jagged spine of stone as we ascended toward the valley where Kratos believed answers could be found, each step echoing with a tension that felt far older than any of us, as though the realm itself held its breath in anticipation of something it could neither prevent nor endure, and the cold deepened into a biting, almost sentient presence that pressed against my armor like an invisible weight, whispering warnings in the language of cracking ice and shifting wind. Atreus kept glancing at me, not out of fear, but out of that dangerous curiosity that only children born of prophecy possess, the sort of curiosity that reshapes worlds without meaning to, while Kratos remained a silent wall of hostility and vigilance, every muscle in his hulking form coiled tightly as though he were preparing for a battle he could not name. There was a moment, brief but undeniable, when the sky flickered, just a thinning of the clouds, a shimmer that revealed a fracture in the firmament like a wound that had not healed properly, and through it, I felt the pull of the warp, faint but unmistakable, a thread of corrupted possibility brushing against the edge of this mythic plane. The boy felt it too. His breath hitched, eyes widening. "Father, did you see that?" Kratos grunted. "I saw nothing." "But I did. I saw a pressure point between worlds, a place where narrative and reality had thinned to the point of fraying, and whatever had pulled me into this realm was still manipulating the boundaries around us like a puppeteer testing the tension of its strings. When we reached the cliffside overlook, the world below seemed frozen in time, a vast valley of ancient pines shrouded in drifting mists, a river winding like a thread of silver, and at its center an enormous, hollowed-out stump, so colossal it could only belong to a tree grown in an era when gods walked openly among mortals. Atreus inhaled sharply. "The world tree's roots used to reach here," he murmured with quiet reverence. "Before, everything changed." Kratos' jaw tensed. The boy speaks too much. But the truth in his voice lingered. Something immense had once touched this place, something that tied the realms together, and now only its scars remained. I felt the pull stronger here, like a wind blowing through a doorway that should not exist. The air crackled. The faint metallic taste of impending conflict brushed my tongue. I stepped toward the stump and placed a hand upon its surface. The wood, though ancient, thrummed with residual energy, faint, fragmented, but unmistakably connected to the cosmic architecture of this world. As I concentrated, images flickered at the edge of perception. 9 realms intertwined like living veins, destiny woven through their intersections, and at the center of it all, something watching. Not a being, but a will. A design. And then, abruptly, a disruption. My arrival, crashing through the pathways like a foreign organism entering a closed ecosystem, sending ripples through the structure of fate itself. Atreus approached hesitantly. "What do you see?" I did not look at him. A world trying to correct something that should not exist. His voice thinned. "You mean you?" "No," I said quietly. "I mean you." The air thickened with tension. Atreus' fingers curled around the strap of his bow. Kratos stepped between us without hesitation, placing himself like an immovable barrier. "Explain," he growled, voice low and dangerous. I studied the stump again, letting the truth settle into language. "Your son is not merely a figure in a prophecy. He is a fulcrum, a pivot, a point at which the fate of multiple realms hinges." Atreus swallowed. "We know that." "No," I murmured. You know only the fragments your gods allowed you to see, but prophecy does not end where your story ends. The boy frowned, confused. Kratos, I narrowed. Speak plainly. I turned to them, the wind stirring the edge of my cloak. Your son's future travels beyond your myth, beyond your world. And something with a will vast enough to pierce the walls between realities, has seen this future and fears what he becomes. Atreus' breath trembled. Why? Before I could answer, the cliff beneath us shuddered. The sky darkened as the clouds twisted into spiraling patterns, as though the atmosphere itself were being wrung out by invisible hands. Kratos spun, pulling Atreus behind him. Magic, he muttered. But this was not magic. This was intrusion. A distortion of space, sharp and violent, as though another realm were clawing its way toward us. A rift tore open in the valley below, thin at first, a silver crack in the air, then widening into a jagged wound dripping with sparks of distorted light. Through it surged a presence I recognized instantly. Warp energy, raw and unstable, seeping into a reality that could not contain it without consequence. Atreus clutched his head, wincing as the psychic noise tore across the landscape like a silent scream. What is that? A mistake, I murmured. One that cannot be allowed to take root. For out of the rift crawled shapes, horrors twisted into form by the warp's chaotic whims, their bodies flickering with shifting limbs and distended features that violated the biological rules of this world. They were small at first, weak, but their presence alone threatened to corrupt the fabric of the realm. And more would follow if the breach stabilized. Kratos did not hesitate. The Leviathan axe burst into motion, its arc trailing cold fire as he hurled it toward the nearest creature, cleaving it in two with a sound like shattering glass. Another lunged at him with spined appendages, shrieking in a voice that didn't belong to any living creature. Kratos caught it by the throat and crushed it with one hand. Atreus fired an arrow that burst into a flash of runic flame, igniting a cluster of smaller abominations before they could spread. He moved with a grace that belied his youth, guided by the whisper of prophecy that curled like a thread through his mind. But the rift widened, and more creatures poured through. Not true diamonds, not yet, but their presence would draw their stronger kin like flies to a wound. If this realm became a conduit for the warp, it would fall. The gods here would fall. And eventually, the infection would spread across the Yggdrasil structure, consuming realm after realm until even the Imperium felt the consequences. I stepped forward, extending my will. The warp recoiled, not in fear, but in recognition. I seized the edges of the breach with invisible force, holding them apart as the realm strained against the intrusion. Energy crackled like lightning between my fingers. The ground trembled. Atreus stared in awe. Kratos braced himself, expecting an explosion. Stay back, I warned, though the words were unnecessary. The rift pulsed violently, and I forced it shut with a single, cataclysmic compression of will. Silence fell. The valley breathed again. The clouds slowly settled into their natural patterns. Atreus exhaled shakily. What caused that? I lowered my hand. Something is testing this world's defenses, I said quietly. Testing mine. Kratos slid the axe across his back. And if it succeeds? I met his gaze. Then your world will know horrors unlike anything it has endured. Atreus looked at me with a mixture of fear and determination. Can we stop it? I considered him carefully. We must. But I felt it, deep beneath the realms, in the roots of Yggdrasil, in the cold chambers of fate, the thing watching us was growing more curious, and more afraid.